Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Habitual Linecrosser. Today, we're going over why, if the U.S. is such a good military, why do they lose at war games? Let's dive into it. Okay, so first off, you have to understand the purpose of a war game. Now, every war game is a little bit different. Now, I had somebody in my comment section when I made that last video talking about how the F-22 was intercepted, and he was talking about the Rafale, fucking whatever. It's a great aircraft. Great aircraft. I would never say anything poor about that aircraft. But the problem with that statement stating you could beat the U.S. one-on-one maybe, but the United States doesn't fight one-on-one in war. We fight at a serious disadvantage in training, but in war, our preferred is 3-1, and that's doctrinally based. So I decided to dive into it. Anyways, that country had around 153 exactly combat aircraft that it had. And that's great. That's a good-sized Air Force. And I would never denounce saying that your Air Force just sucks because you don't have the numbers. No. Training value and operator capability, competence are all factors, right? But the U.S. alone has over 160 F-22 Raptors. We have 450 F-35s. I just decided not to go down the rabbit hole and look into F-16s, F-15s, F-18s, Harriers. I think the Harriers have actually been completely shut down now. I think that program's done. Or any of our other combat aircraft that I may not know about. So you may win in an exercise, but not really overall. So why do nations do this? Every exercise has a different purpose, right? Every exercise has a different reason to exist. Now, oftentimes we force our forces to fight at a disadvantage while they're in training. If you've ever been familiar with the phrase, the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in war, that's the simple concept. So I know when I went through the Joint Readiness Training Center in Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is awful if you've ever done it before. When I went through there, we were the first unit that survived the force-on-force, and we survived marginally with I think there was 20 people left in my company by the time they were done with us. We survived only because we were able to put down a base of fire so large from the avenue of approach that they were coming from that our fisters were able to walk the artillery in on top of them. Then they walked in too far and killed off a bunch of us, but ended up killing the enemy in the process, so we somehow miraculously survived. But we fight at a disadvantage like this. And this breeds a level of competence and understanding on the battlefield that you see in actual war. A perfect example of something I want to talk about, Operation Anaconda. Now, if you're not familiar with Operation Anaconda, I'm going to give you some cliff notes here. I encourage you to go ahead and look into it yourself. Operation Anaconda was in 2002. It was in the Chicot Valley. The 10th Mountain Division, along with certain other special operations forces, went into the Chicot Valley, and their job was to have the Northern Alliance help encircle the valley, and then they were going to push through and start eliminating threats and targets. Now, like I said, the United States fights 3-1. That's how we prefer to fight. If we assess your numbers at 1,000, we're sending 3,000 people. We assessed their numbers around 200. This was woefully incorrect. So we sent around 1,000. This includes support personnel, not just infantry and ground pounders and things like that. So we sent about 1,000 in there. Day one popped off, and the Afghans, like the Afghans do, bailed out immediately. The Northern Alliance decided, this is too hard, this is too scary, this is dangerous, I'm running away, just like they did in 2021 or 2022 whenever we decided to leave. Sorry, you want to fight me? Go ahead, fight for your own country first, because I just don't understand that logic. I don't physically understand running away when the bad guys show up. I will never get that. That being said, so what happened at that point was you surrounded an American unit. There was an American 10th Mountain Brigade there, pretty much, that was completely surrounded on all sides. Hey there, viewer. Do you support the troops? Well, I do make sure that they get their day every year at Applebee's. Yeah, why? What's up? Well, then why haven't you went and bought yourself some Ariel Resupply coffee? I thought it was for vets only. Why would you think something so fucking stupid? Okay, don't attack me here. It's got military-style flavors, like Moab, Spectre, and of course our friend here, Firewatch. Didn't you say in one of your last videos that Moab was pretty potent stuff? If you aren't perpetually on the edge of shitting your pants, is it even real coffee? I don't know what my answer's going to look like. Well, the link in the description of this video will go ahead and get you 10% off your Area Resupply order. Try the coffee. Don't be a bitch. All right, I'm going to get me some. Don't forget they also have Spring Kitty, Christmas Kitty, and Pumpkin Kitty. How is that military related? Because a military veteran owns the company, and all the artwork for those ones are drawn by his kids. Do you hate kids? I believe I'm in a bit of an awkward situation right here because if I say yes, it makes me look bad, but if I say no, I feel like it also makes me look bad. Then why are we still talking? Get you some aerial resupply coffee today. Now, other units that haven't trained for situations like this, because now they found out the real numbers. The real numbers are close to one-on-one, a little over one-on-one. They had about 1,200 bad guys there, and they expected them to have small arms, maybe PKMs, RPGs, stuff like that. But they had RPGs, they had mortars, they had artillery, they had Dishkas, they had all kinds of things in the Shikot Valley. So shit has officially hit the fan for the 10th Mountain Division. But here's what happens. There's a couple of very, very interesting things that happen to American units, right? When they're completely surrounded and cut off. The first thing that happens is you're supposed to stay cool and calm under these situations because you've trained in these situations. You have lost in training several times in these situations, being outnumbered and overwhelmed. You know what you're facing, right? You become very, target-rich environment. Everything that moves, every cricket, every squirrel, every fucking house cat, everything around you that you're not sure is not a threat gets immediately murdered. That's step one, right? Because everybody on the ground at that point in time, they're just like, I know now that I'm fighting for my very existence, and in a jury of my peers, I will be able to beat anything at this point. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is everybody who hears that, everybody, if you are on the radio and you hear that there's an American unit overwhelmed and getting fucking overran, shit pops off. Because this is the thing, I give Marines a hard time, right? I give sailors a hard time. But if I'm on the battlefield and I hear Marines are getting overran, I'm on my way. I don't care who it is. I don't care what unit they are. They are Americans and they are being overran. And you won't get we'll be there in 10 minutes. I'm loading up the trucks right now. Just hold tight, I'm on my way. That's what you get from American forces. And this is something we share with a lot of our coalition partners. From what little experience I have with the Brits and the Aussies and the Canadians, they are very similar in this tactic that just hold tight, I'm on my way. That's just the way that they operate. And again, I don't really work with the Navy. I can't really think of a reason that I would have to help out the Navy, but let's say maybe they were in port and people started attacking and there was maybe a carrier that was getting overran or something. But guess what? In that moment, I'm Army. I don't give a shit. That is my fucking carrier. You don't touch my carrier. And I'm coming to hurt people. That's just the way. So that's number two that happens on the battlefield. If an American unit is getting overran, they will move sea, land, and air to immediately get to you as fast as humanly possible. That is the only variable, is how fast can I get there? That's how that operates. And number three, and this is probably the least talked about, is the whole escalation of force gets real hazy. Real just gray area at this point in time. There's no escalation of force, rules of engagement, any of that stuff. It all just gets real I was in danger of my life, bro. That's how that thing happens, right? So because these American units trained in these situations, the easy answer during Operation Anaconda is when the Northern Alliance bailed out like bitches, is they were we're going to just, set down a base of fire and tactically retreat out of here. But that's not how Americans work. We don't know how to do shit like that. We're just cool. The easiest path to get out of here is just eliminate all the bad guys. That's kind of the way Americans operate. So, but they didn't do this alone. They started calling for everybody under the sun in Operation Anaconda. And everybody under the sun showed up. Let me put it to you this way. By the time the Americans were done in the Shikot Valley, the topography had changed. That is the amount of ordnance that had been dropped. So first you have to gain fire superiority. So that comes with a lot of very close-in guided bombs to keep your people alive. And once the bad guys start running away, now you're hunting. That's what you're doing at that point. So during the peak of this battle, the battle only was supposed to last 3 days. A quick, easy fight, over, done with, move on. 17 days. 17 days was the length of the battle of Operation Anaconda. And during those 17 days, most days, not every single one, but most days, they were running over 200 combat missions a day from combat aircraft into there. This is also one of the only Medals of Honor that have ever been on video. If you've ever seen the video, actually I think it is the only one that is on video. Master Sergeant John Chapman, he was killed in action March 4th, 2002. It is the only ever recorded Medal of Honor recipient ever. So you can watch the video. I do so sparingly, but you can watch Master Sergeant John Chapman earn his Medal of Honor. And unfortunately, he lost his life during that battle, but the man was a beast. But But that's again the way that American units fight. American units fight in a way that we fight like the third monkey on the ramp to Noah's Ark, and we're going to be trying to get out of there, right? So this is how you see things like the Battle of Kamdesh at Cop Keating with Clint Romeshay. I mean, they were overran, outnumbered, heavily outnumbered, like 5 or 6 to 1. And he decided, we need to set up a counteroffensive to get him back outside. So you're outnumbered by a lot, and your first thought is, I need to attack the bad guys. That's a wildly American thing to do. Like that is the way we're built. So let's look at one specific training exercise. What is the purpose of it? I talked about in my other video the F-22. It was wearing drop tanks. It was within visual range because it doesn't make any sense, right? We constantly throw things at ourselves as a what if. Our goal is a what if. Even me as an air defender, when I am training my units, I wrote an air battle. Actually, I rewrote it. It was written by somebody else, and I just revamped it a lot. And it was called Body Bag. And that's just because it didn't have enough characters in the Patriot system for me to name it Kobayashi Maru for my Star Trek fans out there. But I built that, and it was unbeatable. It really was unbeatable. I had one crew pass it, and the reason they passed it is because they cheated. They gave themselves a bunch of extra missiles and launchers. So, yeah, I'm fucking tracking Bonvi. Anyways, so we throw things at our people. When I'm training inside the van with a crew, and a crew is fighting the Patriot missile system, right? I have literally unhooked radios and handed them to the commo guy. Like, hey, this is yours. And they have to figure out how to continue the fight and troubleshoot a radio. Or I would read their TTPs. Now, of course, our TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, or techniques, tactics, and procedures, I've heard it both ways, are secret documents, unfortunately. So I can't really dive into it. But it lays out a lot of, if this happens, you do this. If this happens, you do this. So I would read through those things, and I would pay meticulous attention to the numbers in there. And I would find little gaps of ambiguity, and I would exploit them. I would build an air battle to specifically exploit any inconsistencies in there. And I do this for a couple of reasons. I would do this, number one, to train my operators to get confident with their autonomous engagement criteria. The things that they know, the numbers that they have to see on their screen coming at them so that they can shoot on their own. Number two, I did this to prove a point that my higher echelon unit needed to get some better information because we had some ambiguity in here. And I did that because what if? Right? Like, what if I can't even say anything? Unfortunately, God damn it. I want to be like, I did that, but I can't say what I did. So find those things, right? I've killed off crew members. I'm not a big fan of killing off crew members, but it might happen. Same thing with dropping comms, dropping the radio. Will it happen? Probably not. But what if? They need to be able to operate without that higher echelon unit because they need to be able to do that. And when you build this level of confidence, when something goes wrong on the battlefield, you learn that you have trained individuals to do the job regardless of the circumstances. So when it comes to things like the F-22, my theory, right? It was wearing drop tanks, it was within visual range, and it was engaged with guns. What if, right? So us just showing up and annihilating an aggressor aircraft means nothing. They learn nothing, we learn nothing. That's not good training. Right? But what if you have an F-22 going on a long-range run somewhere? It's wearing drop tanks because it needs the extra fuel. Something gets the drop on it because it's wearing those drop tanks. Somehow. Maybe they got something magical. They got the drop on it. So now they're within visual range. Well, they go to drop their drop tanks and be able to maneuver and do what they need to do. Well, let's say that their drop tanks have a malfunction and now they can't drop their drop tanks. This is all valid, right? Like, this is a series of unfortunate events, and I mean, yeah, you do have to cripple, but now you have a pilot who is fighting with handicaps. When I was in the tanker world, you had to do some of your gunnery tables with the gas sight, the gunner's auxiliary sight, which is what I just said. Yeah, gunner's auxiliary sight. I said gas sight. I'm sorry. You had to do it, and it's like a periscope like this, and there's a bar that goes down, there's a prism there, and you're literally looking through, and you can see like crosshairs, like freaking War Thunder, instead of using like your actual big sight, or you got another one up here that's all digital and everything else like that. Like, you have to just pretend that those are broken, and you have to fight from this. We train for that just in case maybe one of those took a big enough caliber round that it is knocked out. And now you have to be able to fight the system this way. Or maybe an RPG hit the doghouse or something. This is why we train. We train for the worst possible scenario. We do that on purpose so that when things hit the wall, we don't throw our hands up and run away like we're part of the Northern Alliance. And this one, I love this. I love it, but I hate this story, right? So this is originally from the Daily Telegraph, but the Daily Wire also published it as well. They regurgitated it because British tabloids and media love to just regurgitate improper information. And unfortunately, I'm not paying for a subscription to the Daily Telegraph, so we're not going to read it there. We'll read it on the Daily Wire. It says, British commandos dominated. I don't know who they're quoting there. No one, I have not been able to find who they quoted in that section right there at all. Because the Brits didn't say that. The Americans didn't say that. No one said that except for Daily Telegraph. British Marines have reportedly dominated, there it is again, not saying who it's quoted, U.S. forces on American soil in a combat training exercise and forced American forces to surrender just days into the exercise. During the training exercise, which took place in California, British forces reportedly eliminated almost the entire unit. Again, no idea who they're quoting here, because we're going to find out the truth here in a short minute. Of U.S. forces, the Telegraph reported, adding that U.S. forces asked for a reset, it's a quote within a quote, good job, halfway into the 5-day warfighting exercise, having suffered significant simulated casualties. Sounds like we got our ass kicked, right? By 40 commandos. Well, here's the problem. When you go over and you look up, Task and Purpose and the U.S. Marine Corps Times explain that that's not how the exercise worked. No surrender, what really happened between U.S. and British Marines at a training exercise. Royal Marines forced U.S. troops to surrender just days into training exercise. The headline reappeared last week in the UK's Daily Telegraph. The article beneath had an almost breathless tone to it, unusual for a paper considered a serious broadsheet. A Royal Marines Commando battalion had eliminated almost the entire U.S. unit, dominating them and forcing them to ask for a reset halfway into the exercise. So thorough was this drubbing. Apparently, the commando's kill board was chock full of destroyed U.S. equipment. The truth might be considered less noteworthy to those who prefer the U.S. and UK militaries as peer competitors rather than allies, but it's quite impressive as the same. The exercise, which the Telegraph was mistakenly called Green Dagger, was the Marine Corps' biannual Marine Air Ground Task Force Warfighting Exercise, or MWSX for short. During these events, battalions, regiments, and sometimes entire divisions face off against each other, free-playing, force-on-force exercise that replicates the conditions of warfighting at a peer nation. In this particular exercise, the 7th Marine Regiment, playing a home turf, was the adversary force pitted against the Hawaii-based 3rd Marine Regiment. That's Americans versus Americans, who were the attacking force. The British 40 Commando was subordinate under the 7th Marines. So how are you going to dominate all these Marines when they're on your same team? Sounds like a really bad task force, but it's okay because they didn't. Alongside a Marine Special Operations Company and a Marine Infantry Battalion, 2-5. Opposing them under the 3rd Marines were 2 battalions of Marine Infantry along with various supporting units. There was no part of the exercise in which 40 commandos were pitted alone against a U.S. Marine unit and would have had the opportunity to dominate them. And at no time did a unit surrender during the exercise, nor was it any unit almost completely eliminated by 40 commandos. The exercise does not involve an objective means of scoring. Although casualties are recorded and dispatched on a zombie fob until resurrected, the use of killboards was subjective, usually inaccurate means by which units attempt to track destruction of enemy assets. The exercise was halted for a period of several hours while all participating units searched for a truck platoon that had gone missing. There was no reset to allow units to recover. So after reading all the various articles of what happened in this exercise, more or less the Marines were, the Royal Commandos were attached to a Marine unit. The Royal Commandos had a very specific role, is they were supposed to fight like an insurgency would fight. They were not designed to use conventional tactics. And they did really, really well. Like, I'm not doing this to say, like, the British Royal Commandos are garbage. No, they did really well at their individual job. Their job was not to overwhelm and annihilate and get all these surrenders. That wasn't their job. They were reconnaissance. They ended up buying off the shelf. This is one of the cool things that I read. They ended up buying off the shelf GPS trackers. And they put them in everybody's vehicles so they knew where everybody was on the battlefield at any given time. That is ingenious, right? And that is now something that they are trained for. Oh, okay, I need to be able to do this. You have people waving like wands and looking for trackers inside vehicles. They did a phenomenal job, but their job was strictly reconnaissance in this. More or less, it was reconnaissance. They did a few special guy things here and there, helped set up ambushes. And they, again, I'm not saying the British Royal Marines or Commandos are incapable. They are a formidable force. I want people to understand, when you're looking at a training exercise, more often than not, US does them with US. We do them with each other, but there's never any news about that. Why? Because there's no chest beating to be had. We understand the purpose of that exercise. When anyone beats an F-22, it's notable, so everyone beats their chest about it. And then you have to explain the confines of the exercise. When someone beats an American unit in anything, it's chest beating. So that's why there's news about it. If the Marines had, let's say they did pit them against the British commandos. Let's say you pit 1,500 Marines against 40 commandos. I'm sorry, like, don't get me wrong, you're probably very good at your job and you're going to create some casualties. Those are not odds that I would want. But anyways, let's say you did that. And the U.S. Marines beat the commandos. What did the commandos learn? What did the Marines learn? Nothing. There's nothing beneficial to be learned there. But if you use the commandos as an unconventional force to help leverage assets and information against an overwhelming force, everybody learns from those things. So keep that in mind. When you're breaking down these exercises, and anyone who beats an American anything loves to beat their chest. But we lose on purpose. We set these things in a way so that we get our asses kicked, so that when we're on the battlefield and shit goes not according to plan, because that's the way the battlefield works, we don't get discouraged, we keep our head up, and we continue on. The Brits do this, the Canadians do this, the Aussies do this, I'm trying to think of another nation that does this, because I've worked with a couple other ones, but I don't want to like call them out, but like, they don't do this. I will tell you right now, aggressor nations, China sometimes does this. Russia, on the other hand, never does this. They will tell you 100% of the time that they win every exercise they are ever a part of. They are training for failure. That is exactly what they're doing. Because when something goes wrong, they are unable to react to a situation and think on their feet. When you throw caution to the wind and make things really difficult for an organization, it in turn creates more competence on the battlefield. And that's what I want you guys to understand about this stuff. So, as always, do not give in to the 22 a day. Every single one of you are amazing, and I will see you guys right here next time. Play me out.